Our second scripture this morning comes from the book of Acts. It is two stories that intersect because of God's great power. Listen for the word of God. There was a man in Caesarea named Cornelius, a centurion in the Italian company. He and his whole household were pious Gentile God worshippers. He gave generously to those in need among the Jewish people and prayed to God constantly. One day, at nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he clearly saw an angel from God in a vision. The angel came to him and said, "Cornelius!" Startled, he stared at the angel and replied, "What is it, Lord?" The angel said, "Your prayers and your compassionate acts are like a memorial offering to God. Send messengers to Joppa at once and summon a certain Simon, the one who is known as Peter. He is a guest of Simon the tanner, whose house is near the seacoast." When the angel who was speaking to him had gone, Cornelius summoned 2 of his household servants, along with a pious soldier from his personal staff. He explained everything to them, then sent them to Joppa. At noon on the following day, as their journey brought them close to the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted to eat. While the others were preparing the meal, he had a visionary experience. He saw heaven opened up and something like a large linen sheet being lowered to the earth by its 4 corners. Inside the sheet were all kinds of 4-legged animals, reptiles, and wild birds. A voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." Peter exclaimed, "Absolutely not, Lord. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke a second time, "Never consider unclean what God has made pure." This happened 3 times. Then the object was suddenly pulled back into heaven. Peter was bewildered about the meaning of the vision. Just then, the messengers sent by Cornelius discovered the whereabouts of Simon's house and arrived at the gate. Calling out, they inquired whether Simon, known as Peter, was a guest there. While Peter was brooding over the vision, the Spirit interrupted him. "Look, 3 people are looking for you. Go downstairs. Don't ask questions. Just go with them, because I have sent them." So Peter went downstairs and told them, "I'm the one you were looking for. Why have you come?" They replied, "We've come on behalf of Cornelius, a centurion and righteous man, a God worshiper who is well respected by all Jewish people. A holy angel directed him to summon you to his house and to hear what you have to say." Peter invited them into the house as his guests. The next day, he got up and went with them, together with some of the believers from Joppa. Peter probably thought it was all about sects. Sects. S-E-C-T-A-S. Sects. But it's good to know you're all listening now. Peter probably thought that this Jesus movement was about another sect within Judaism. Because Peter had grown up within Judaism. And Jesus was a Jew, and all of Jesus' disciples initially were Jewish. And so Peter probably thought that Judaism was going to encompass Christianity. And that there were going to be Pharisees and Sadducees and Jesuses. That this whole Jesus movement was going to live within the Judaism with which he was familiar. That all of Jesus' followers were going to be bound by the laws that he'd grown up with. That they were going to be people like him. And we see that. It's pretty clear from where Peter decides to go. Jesus says, "Go into all the world to make disciples of all nations." And Peter says, "Right, go to all the Jewish world." And he sticks around in Jerusalem. And then when he gets kicked out of Jerusalem for making trouble, he goes to Lydda and Joppa. Right there in Galilee, right there in Judea. He is not going to all the world. He is going to the places that are comfortable for him. Because he has assumed that when Jesus said, "Go to all the world," it meant the world that he was familiar with. The world of people who looked like he did and dressed like he did and talked like he did and prayed like he did and ate like he did. And I mention the eating because that becomes the salient point in this vision from God. Peter has concluded that he's supposed to reach other Jewish folks for Jesus. And so he's in Joppa, staying with Jewish folks, talking with Jewish folks, building a Jewish Christian community, which is what he thinks he's supposed to be doing. And he's worn himself out and he's gotten pretty hungry and he's gone up to pray before his meal. And this vision unfolds before him of a great big tablecloth with all these different kinds of foods upon it. Some of them are things he's familiar with. He gets lamb and chicken and probably some shawarma. It's the Middle East. Maybe baba ganoush. Good stuff. And then he realizes that amidst the foods that he's familiar with, the animals he's comfortable with, are other things that he would never touch. Things like pigs, good Virginia ham, right? A shrimp cocktail. Maybe even some Urbana oysters. There are all kinds of things that he would never go near. And a voice comes from the heaven, kill and eat. And he says, no way. I would never, God. And I wonder if the first time this command comes and this food comes down, I wonder if he thinks that it's some sort of test. Like he is hungry and suddenly foods he's not supposed to have are put in front of him. It's like the marshmallow test they do with psychologists and preschoolers. I think he may think it's a test the first time, but then this is repeated. 3 times this command comes, eat this. And then this clarifying sentence, do not call profane what God has made clean. And you can almost hear the glass breaking in his head, the shattering sound of all of his expectations and all of the things that he's taken for granted and all the things he's been certain about that all sort of collapse in a heap when this is said to him. Because his faith has been defined by these rules, by what you're not supposed to eat and what you're not supposed to wear and the way you're not supposed to cut your beard and the people you're not supposed to associate with. His whole faith has been surrounded by these boundaries. And all of a sudden, this voice from heaven, this vision laid before him from God, says, actually, maybe not that anymore. Maybe I want you to go in a new direction. And Peter is sitting there trying to wrap his head around what this means. If God is telling him to eat unclean foods, and if the words were not, don't eat, or go ahead and eat things you thought were impure, but just don't call profane what I've made clean. Is this about something bigger than food? Is this not just about you can have bacon-wrapped scallops, but something bigger? And he's sitting there, it says he's brooding over this vision. He's brooding over it, trying to make sense of what has been revealed to him, trying to make sense of this message. Is it about keeping kosher, or when God says, do not call profane what I've made clean, is this also about mixed fabrics? Is this about trimming the corners of your beard? Is this about talking to Gentiles? Peter is wrapped up in this vision, trying to figure out what it means, trying to understand what it would look like if the entire format of his faith were shaken up. If all of these rules and expectations and walls he'd taken for granted just disappeared. And as he is trying to make sense of this, strangers show up at the gate. Strangers who are, I'm just going to say, problematic for Peter. Remember, Peter is Jewish and a follower of Jesus who was executed by the Romans. And who shows up at the gate? A Roman soldier and a couple of people from a Roman centurion's household, Gentiles, people who are scary and represent most of the things that he's opposed to. People who don't dress like he does, or talk like he does, or worship like he does, or eat like he does, have shown up at his gate. And Peter is faced with a decision. What does he do? He has a vision that says, don't call profane what I have made clean. A vision that seems to suggest that those rules he'd taken for granted, those limits that he had set around what he was supposed to do, were being knocked down. And then people show up to help him knock down those walls. New partners in ministry. And Peter is faced with a couple of decisions he has to make in quick succession. The first thing that Peter is called to do is let go of his smaller vision in order to embrace God's bigger vision. Peter has to let go of the idea that this is going to be a sect, that Christianity is going to fit neatly within the limits that he assumed were there and necessary. He has to let go of all of his expectations that the people he's going to meet and the people he's going to reach for Jesus will be Jewish, that they will also follow the same dietary laws and wear the same clothes and speak the same language that he is comfortable with. He has to let go of this comfortable vision he had for a ministry in Judea because he's about to be sent to the whole world. And he starts to realize that the vision he had, the image that he had of Christianity was wrong. He had sort of pictured it, I think, like an ancient city where everybody inside is a person who lives in the city and they belong, and then there's a big wall around the outside, and then there's everybody else who doesn't fit, right? Foreigners and strangers and the folks who aren't of us. You know what I mean? That was, I think, the image that he had of Christianity. It was going to be within that city wall, and all of a sudden he's given a completely different image of Christianity. He's given a picture of Christianity that's defined not by the boundaries of the law around the outside, but by the center that is Jesus Christ. And everybody who is drawn to that center is welcomed and included and part of the movement. Everyone who comes to Christ gets to be part of the movement. It's an image more like an atom, if you remember the little atomic models in class when you were in chemistry, with the nucleus that has all the weight that really defines what this is, and then you have just electrons, energy at the margins that are always bumping up against other things and trying to react and trying to transform and trying to connect. You know what I mean? You took chemistry class, some of you? Okay. That's the image that Peter is given of Christianity. A faith defined by Christ at the center and energy at the edges reaching out. Not bound by some kind of wall or set of rules, but centered on Christ as the only thing that's really important. It's a very different vision than he'd been imagining. And he has to let go of his assumptions and his expectations to see this great big dream that God is sending. And the second step that Peter has to take, and it's both a gift and a challenge, is that Peter is invited in the very moment he has this realization to reach to a new partner. He is invited to partner with people he would never have spoken to voluntarily. He is invited to partner with people he would not have sat at a table with comfortably. He is invited to partner with people who he might have thought yesterday were his enemies. He's invited to partner with an unexpected ministry buddy in the Romans, in Cornelius. And this is a challenge, an enormous challenge for him, but it is also a gift. Because that great big dream that God sent of a church that isn't bound within the Jewish law, if he's going to achieve that, he needs partners who are outside it. He needs partners who can talk to other Romans. He needs partners who are going to be traveling the world through the Roman Empire to make connections in new places and share the word of Christ in new communities. He needs these other partners, people who speak other languages, people who go places that are unfamiliar for him, people who can get him connections to the big city in Italy, Rome, where he eventually becomes the seat of this very big church that's going to be in the news a lot this week. Peter doesn't go there, doesn't do that if he doesn't make these connections. If he doesn't talk to Cornelius and Cornelius' household and start becoming friends with Romans, he doesn't go there, that church doesn't happen, and we might not be sitting here today. Peter had to let go of his little dream of a sect in Judea in order to be part of a global movement for Jesus Christ. He needed to partner with unexpected people in order to grow God's kingdom on earth. And if we're going to keep being part of this very big dream, of this very, very big movement, then we're going to need to do some of those things too. It's going to be incumbent upon us to think about what are the limits that we are holding to. What are the small visions that we need to relinquish in order to see God's big dream? What are the limitations we've assumed were there that we couldn't cross? The boundaries that we didn't think we were comfortable enough to go beyond? What are those things that we need to let go, to release, in order to be part of God's great big dream for all creation? This dream where everyone knows and experiences the full love of Jesus Christ. And we need to ask who we're going to have to partner with. Because I don't know about you, but I don't speak that many languages. And if this is going to be a movement where we reach out to other people, we're going to need people who speak other languages. I don't go into every neighborhood in this community, but somebody does. How do we partner with those folks so that the word of Christ, the love of Christ, goes farther? Who are the unexpected partners with whom we are called to work so that the love of Christ can reach every single space, every single inch of this planet? When we are willing to let go of our limitations, when we're willing to reach for new partners, the world can be transformed. Let me tell you a story. In 1968, there were two denominations in the United States that both really wanted to grow and go farther. But both of them were defined in some ways by the limits that they drew around themselves. One of them was the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church was a segregated denomination. We had entire power structures, entire bishop and district superintendent and churches and conferences that were separated by race, and we could not grow in a segregated capacity. There were people we couldn't reach if we weren't willing to work together. Meanwhile, there were also Evangelical United Brethren. They had been a German-speaking church with a theology similar to the Methodist Church, but they had gone in another direction, and they were fully integrated racially. But the Evangelical United Brethren were not so sure about those women in the pulpit. They were not comfortable with women's ordination. They had drawn a pretty firm line about, we're not going to have those women up there. But both churches realized that God was calling them together and that they could reach farther and share resources and get to more places with the love of Christ if they joined together. So they had a conference, and they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to let go of our walls. The Methodists vowed to dismantle their segregated systems and to love across racial lines. The EUB allowed women to be ordained. They broke down their walls and they joined together. They reached for new partners, and they became the second largest Protestant denomination in the United States, and a global force for Christ in the world. Hugely powerful, with missions on every continent where there are people. It was possible because they let down their walls and their limited expectations to reach for God's love in someone else. Friends, where is God calling us to let go of our limited vision, to see God's great dream for the world? Who is God calling us to reach toward? And how do we seek a bigger understanding of God's kingdom on earth, where all people know the love of Christ and the whole world is transformed? I think we start by practicing what that looks like. And we practice that here, regularly, here at this table. Because when we come to this table, we acknowledge that Christ is at the center and there are no walls. We don't put a wall around the communion table. Everyone who is drawn to Christ is invited to come and receive. Everyone You don't have to be a member of this church. You don't have to be a member of a church. You don't have to have been baptized or made a profession of faith. You just need to long for Jesus, and you are welcome here. But you've got to know that someone else is going to come next to you who might not look like you, who might not think like you, who might not talk like you, who might not have the same nationality or ethnicity or political beliefs or sexuality or gender expression. There might be someone coming to this table who is not like you, and they're going to come too. And once we come to this table nourished by grace, we are called to go out as partners working in the world. So we want to invite you today to come receive this gift of grace, to be filled with the Spirit, and to go forth to partner with others in God's big dream. Now, as we come to this table, we acknowledge that there are some things sometimes that hold us back. Guilt, shame, reluctance to stand next to that other person. And so before we come to this table today, we want to invite you to a time of silent confession and prayer.